Welcome to the new episode of the Cyber Threats Radar podcast. Today, we're embarking on a really crucial deep dive. This is for every IT leader, every security professional, frankly, anyone curious about staying safe online. Our mission, figuring out the safest web browser for 2025. But here's the twist. We have to move past this old idea of finding a browser with zero vulnerabilities. That's just not realistic anymore.
Chasing perfection is futile here.
Exactly. The real question, the one we need to answer is, which browser can we actually secure? Which one can we manage effectively, keep updated, and leverage? Especially knowing that, let's be honest, users often put productivity first.
That tension is precisely it. Security versus productivity. It's the core challenge in enterprise risk management right now. And the quote-unquote safest choice isn't the one with the fewest theoretical flaws on paper. It really isn't.
Right.
It's the one that actually works within a managed security stack. Because let's face it, if your security measures constantly fight how your users need to work, well, you're going to lose that battle. Users find workarounds.
They always do.
So looking at the landscape, the dominance it's quite stark. Google Chrome, it holds a massive slice, like 67.94% of the global market share.
Wow, over 2/3.
Yeah. Then you've got Apple's Safari trailing significantly at about 16.18% and Microsoft Edge around 5.07%. So any real security discussion for an enterprise, especially a large one, it has to start with Chrome.
Because that's where the focus is.
Exactly. Attackers naturally focus their resources where the most targets are. And right now, overwhelmingly, the primary target is Chrome.
Okay, let's unpack this vulnerability paradox then, because this is where things get really interesting, maybe even counterintuitive. The raw numbers, they can be pretty shocking. Google's threat intelligence group reported, get this, 75 zero-day vulnerabilities exploited in the wild in 2024 alone.
75, that's a huge number.
It is. And because of that massive market share we just talked about, Chrome inevitably soaked up the vast majority of those targeted attacks. 75 zero days in just 1 year. I mean, that really suggests attackers are getting much better, much more focused on that browser layer, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. The browser is a key entry point, but, and this is crucial, we have to move beyond just counting vulnerabilities.
Okay.
The paradox is this. While Chrome might have the most reported flaws, it arguably also has the strongest operational security posture. That comes down to its sheer size, its resources, the investment Google makes.
So relying on a less popular browser? Security by obscurity, as they say.
It's really just wishful thinking. It's not a strategy. Think about it. A flaw discovered in some niche browser might sit there unpatched for weeks, maybe longer. The resources just aren't comparable.
Right. So what defines a safe browser today, then, if it's not just the vulnerability count?
It's really a multi-layered defense strategy. It goes way beyond just the browser's code itself. We're talking about things like strict cookie partitioning to stop cross-site tracking, advanced resistance to digital fingerprinting, which is a sneaky one, hardened sandboxing, so processes are compartmentalized and can't easily affect the rest of the system, and crucially, integration. How well does it play with the broader security ecosystem? Your EDR tools, your managed antivirus, robust network defenses like secure DNS using DOH or DOT, DNS over HTTPS or TLS.
Right, shrinking the attack surface from the browser, too.
Exactly. These things collectively shrink the exposure, even if a flaw exists momentarily.
So if operational security is the real key, let's dive into the specific browsers, starting with the big one, Chrome. The king of the hill. You mentioned its operational strengths, but what specifically helps IT teams, sleep a bit better at night despite that high volume of 0 days?
Well, it really boils down to two main things: speed of response and the management infrastructure around it. Chrome offers arguably the most rapid deployment of security updates in the industry. When a critical patch is needed, they can push it globally, sometimes within hours.
Hours. That's incredibly fast.
It is. And yes, we saw serious examples in 2025, like those critical V8 JavaScript engine flaws. Think CVE 2025-2783 or that sandbox escape, CVE 2025-6554. These were serious. But the actual window of exposure for those vulnerabilities, especially in a well-managed enterprise environment that forces updates, it's incredibly narrow compared to competitors. That rapid patch velocity, that's Chrome's true security advantage in practice.
That makes sense. Minimizing the time you're vulnerable is huge. Okay, let's pivot then. What about the alternatives? Mozilla Firefox. It's often championed as the privacy-first choice. What are the real-world pros and cons for an enterprise?
Firefox definitely has strengths on the privacy front.
Hmm.
Its enhanced tracking protection is excellent, enabled by default, and being open source means, in theory, more eyes on the code, which is good.
But there's a trade-off.
There often is. The trade-off really shows up in productivity benchmarks. Recent 2025 testing, for instance, consistently ranked Firefox, well, last in speed among the major browsers.
Ouch. Last. In what areas?
Specifically, things like slower page responsiveness, JavaScript execution times. And when users start noticing that lag, when things feel slow, what
Well, they
happens?
complain, or worse, they find their own solution.
Exactly. They start looking for alternatives, and that can quickly lead to shadow IT installing unmanaged software. Plus, its smaller market share translates directly to smaller security teams and fewer enterprise management resources compared to Google or Microsoft.
Got it. Okay, then there's Apple Safari, deeply baked into the macOS and iOS ecosystem.
Right. Safari's major strength is that tight security integration with Apple hardware and OS features. Things like private relay, strong anti-tracking, using machine learning. It's pretty slick.
So if you're an all-Apple shop,
If your organization is 100% Apple, it's definitely a compelling choice from an integration standpoint. But that's the catch. It is limited to that ecosystem. And maybe more critically, for security teams, its patch cycle is significantly slower and less predictable than Chrome's continuous deployment model. Updates often tie into larger OS updates.
which means waiting longer for critical security fixes sometimes.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, and finally, Microsoft Edge, the sort of enterprise contender that's gained ground.
Edge is definitely a powerful contender, particularly for organizations heavily invested in the Microsoft ecosystem. It integrates deeply with Microsoft 365 and Azure security services.
Like Smart Screen.
Exactly. Smart screen phishing protection is generally considered best in class, and its reported vulnerability count has been lower recently compared to Chrome. However, and this is a crucial technical point you have to remember.
Built on Chromium, right?
Precisely. Edge is Chromium-based. So while Microsoft puts its own security layer and features on top, it still inherits the core engine risks from Chrome. This means IT teams essentially have to track two vulnerability streams simultaneously, those specific to Edge additions and those inherited from the Chromium base.
So it's a bit more complex to manage the risk profile there.
It adds a layer, yes.
Okay, we've established that security isn't just inherent in the browser code. It's heavily about how it's managed and the surrounding defenses. Let's shift focus now to something more insidious, the hidden threats that can bypass even a well-configured browser core, like digital fingerprinting. Let's really dive into what that means, because I think many users don't grasp it.
Right. Digital fingerprinting it's essentially about creating a persistent, unique ID for your browser, and by extension, you, based on a collection of subtle signals your browser gives off.
Signals? Like what?
All sorts of things. Attackers or trackers combine data points like the specific list of fonts you have installed, your graphics card's WebGL rendering capabilities, which browser plugins are present, screen resolution, even tiny variations in IP writing paths.
Wow, okay.
And the scary part is, even if you diligently clear your cookies or you use a private browsing window, many of these network-level and script-level signals remain visible. They combine to create a highly unique fingerprint.
So that private window isn't really private against this.
It offers almost no protection against sophisticated fingerprinting techniques. That allows trackers, or potentially attackers, to follow you across sessions, across sites, sometimes indefinitely, even without rookies.
That's a huge misunderstanding for most people, I think. I used incognito, I'm fine.
Yeah, it provides a false sense of security against tracking.
So the defense strategy can't just be about clearing history or using private mode. What technical policies do organizations need to enforce to actually cut down that digital footprint?
It really starts with strict policy enforcement. Blocking all third-party cookies by default across the organization is a baseline now.
Okay.
Reducing the number of risky web APIs that websites are allowed to access. Using managed DNS servers, specifically ones that include tracker blocking lists, is also essential. It cuts off requests to known tracking domains at the network level. But perhaps the single largest, most manageable vulnerability, especially for Chromium-based browsers like Chrome and Edge, is that vast extension ecosystem.
Ah, extensions. Chrome's library is, its greatest productivity strength for many users. Millions of add-ons. But yeah, it's also a terrifying potential attack surface, isn't it?
Absolutely terrifying. We're not just talking about a few poorly coded apps anymore. We're talking about actively malicious extensions, adware, spyware, data harvesters that deliberately request overly broad
Like
permissions.
read and change all your data on the websites you visit.
Exactly that. And how many users actually read those permission requests carefully before clicking add?
Probably very few.
Right. So when an extension gets that level of permission, it's effectively an open door for data exfiltration, credential theft, you name it. Trying to police this manually, checking every extension request across hundreds or thousands of users, it's basically impossible.
So you need automation, strategic automation.
You absolutely do. This is where tools specifically designed for this problem come in. Solutions like, for example, Spin.AI. It provides things like automated risk analysis of extensions, policy-based management like allow listing or block listing sandboxing capabilities for potentially risky ones, and incident response features.
And that helps manage the risk across different browsers too.
Yes, it's designed to handle this challenge consistently across Chrome, Edge, and even Firefox, significantly reducing that massive risk posed by unvetted browser add-ons.
Okay, so SpinCRX tackles the extension risk.
Yeah.
But what about general browser policy enforcement? You mentioned Chrome Enterprise Core provides powerful free management tools. That's great, but honestly, picture an IT team with, say, 500 users. If they need to configure really granular access policies, different rules for different devices, user groups, locations, and then maintain all that manually, aren't they just creating a massive compliance headache, a time sink that costs thousands of hours?
You've absolutely hit on the central sort of technical debt of a lot of modern IT security. Manual configuration is brittle. It inevitably leads to drift over time, misconfigurations creep in, security gaps open up.
It just doesn't scale.
It doesn't scale effectively or reliably. This is precisely why comprehensive platforms become necessary. You need a platform that can automate these complex security tasks, provide consistent policy enforcement that goes beyond what the native browser tools offer out of the box.
Right, something that ties it all together.
Exactly. And this is the role that a platform like Spin.AI fills. It's designed as an all-in-one SaaS security platform to manage these critical dependencies, really starting where the browser's built-in capabilities end.
So what kind of things does Spin.AI handle specifically?
Well, for instance, it provides SaaS security posture management, or Spin SPM. This automatically identifies and helps remediate misconfigurations across your entire SaaS environment, not just the browser layer, because risks often connect.
Okay, looking beyond the browser itself.
Yes. It also handles things like ransomware detection and response Spin RDR, ensuring you can recover quickly if an attack does get through, maybe originating from a browser's zero-day exploit. And critically, especially relevant to browser risks, there's data leak prevention, Spin DLP. This helps control how data is shared and can prevent unauthorized exfiltration, maybe through a malicious extension or risky user behavior.
That comprehensive coverage makes sense.
And it's worth noting, reliability and trust are key here. Spin.AI is certified compliant with major standards like HIPAA, HIPAA, PCI DSS for financial data, and GDPR for privacy. That level of governance is baked into the platform's architecture.
Got it. Okay, so bringing this all together, we have to confront the user reality to really land on a final verdict, don't we?
We do.
If IT tries to force users off Chrome, maybe onto a niche browser deemed safer on paper, are we actually creating security? Or are we just generating frustration?
Often it's the latter. That frustration inevitably leads to shadow IT. Users will find a way to use the tools they feel make them productive. They'll install an unsecured, unmanaged instance of Chrome on their own just to access one specific web app or extension they like.
And suddenly they have inconsistent policies, reduced visibility, and arguably less overall security than if you just managed Chrome properly in the first place.
Precisely. We have to meet users where they are and secure the tools they are determined to use.
So this leads us where exactly?
This necessity really leads us to what I'd call a multi-browser strategy. It's about strategic coverage. Not picking one single safest browser for everyone. You strategically tier them based on risk and need.
Okay, how would that look in practice? Tiering browsers.
So maybe Tier 1 is Microsoft Edge. You reserve it for tasks requiring maximum security and compliance, accessing sensitive internal systems, financial portals. You'd have a very strict extension deny list, maybe only a handful of approved tools allowed.
Locked down.
Then Tier 2, this would be your workhorse, Managed Chrome, used by the majority of your productivity users. But it's secured comprehensively with strong management policies, forced updates, and crucially, a strict extension allow list managed via platform like Spin.AI. Only approved, vetted extensions are permitted.
Allow list is key there, not just block lists.
Absolutely. And then maybe you have a tier 3, perhaps something like Firefox or Safari, used only for very specific niche cases, maybe highly specialized development tasks or operations requiring extreme privacy isolation, used by a small subset of users.
That tiered approach sounds strategically solid, much more
Mm.
realistic than a one-size-fits-all mandate. But doesn't managing 3 different browsers add significant administrative overhead? Isn't that a big trade-off?
It is a trade-off, certainly, compared to standardizing on one. But this is where the management platform becomes critical. That platform is what absorbs and centralizes much of that overhead. If the policy enforcement is unified, if you can manage the extensions, the security posture, the updates for all 3 tiers, ideally from a single pane of glass, then the administrative burden is minimized. You get the benefit of tailored security coverage without drowning in manual configuration for each browser type.
Okay, that makes sense. The platform is the key to making the strategy viable.
It is.
Which brings us, I think, to the final verdict.
Hmm.
Based on everything we discussed, the market share, the threat landscape, the operational security, the management capabilities, when Google Chrome is configured correctly, when it's managed diligently through its robust enterprise features, and crucially, when it's paired with advanced security automation tools like Spin.AI and Spin.CRX to handle extensions and posture,
Hmm.
it seems like it achieves security parity with, and in many practical ways, actually surpasses the real-world security of those traditionally labeled safer browsers. Is that fair to say?
I think that is fair, especially when you factor in the speed of response. Its massive ecosystem, when managed, becomes a strength. That rapid threat response capability and the superior management infrastructure available for it. It makes Chrome the most practical security choice for the majority of modern organizations in 2025.
Practical being the key word there.
Practical, manageable, and effective in the real world. So, the essential checklist, regardless of which browser or tier you're talking about, it remains pretty simple but absolutely non-negotiable. Enforce auto updates religiously. Block third-party cookies by default through organizational policy. Route all traffic via secure managed DNS. And crucially, pair the browser with managed endpoint security, your ED antivirus, and a strict enforced extension policy, ideally an allow list managed by an automated solution. That last one is mandatory for Chrome and Edge.
So wrapping it up, we confirm that core insight from our deep dive, right? The most secure browser isn't some mythical piece of perfect code.
No, it's the one users will actually adopt and use consistently, provided it has comprehensive security configurations actively enforced around it. Strategic coverage, centralized management, automation that defines modern enterprise browser security, not forcing everyone onto one potentially less usable option.
Okay, a really practical conclusion. Now, just before we sign off, a final provocative thought for our listeners. We focused almost entirely today on securing the browser layer itself. But browsers are just one piece of a very complex security stack. So here's the question to ponder. What hidden vulnerability might still be exposed if your browser is buttoned down tight, perfectly secure, but your underlying identity management system, or maybe a critical sauce applications configuration, is flawed? Think about those cascading dependencies as you build out your overall defense strategy. Thank you for listening. Stay safe.